Hello, welcome to whatwasthatradio.com's YouTube, or if it's embedded somewhere else, please consider going to whatwasthatradio.com and checking out what on earth that is. It's a place to discover modern rock alternative, and cognizant of the fact that I addressed that and give the rundown when I first meet and talk to Marshall Scheuttle, which we'll get to in just a second, I won't double down on it now in this moment. But this is a conversation about a new world in NFTs and KGP and what they're doing for photographers I have no idea about beyond one of my best friends, Jason Verners, who you might know if you're in the NFT world, getting excited to speaking too fast, from the BitLetro Labs team and their Dreamers campaign and beyond. When Jason says he's into someone and that there's an extreme amount of passion and intelligence behind it, I'm looking to learn and converse with them. So here's a conversation with Marshall Scheuttle.
Check, check, check.
Yes, I hear you, Marshall.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, just hanging out. You actually beat me to it. I think you joined a few minutes ago, and I was like, oh, damn it, I'm just getting the tea ready, man.
Oh, dude, don't even worry about it. I'm in my day right now is jumping in between 6 Twitter spaces and 2 podcasts. So it's I'm always on deck in something. So it's all good.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, well, so it's our mutual friend in Jason Verners that has put us in touch together and to talk about a variety of things that ultimately come down to a central core of KGP NFT.
Nice. Oh man, I see your record collection back there. I wish Chris was on the call. He would have a lot of questions for you.
Well, there's about 800 more in the other room. This is just I always said to my family that when I actually get into radio and broadcasting, I'm going to start a record collection and I'm going to get a drum kit. And
Nice.
I was in commercial broadcasting for 10 years up until the pandemic. I chose to leave. I just wanted to keep growing, keep pushing myself into my passions. And so that was when What Was That Radio was born, which is all about, it's a radio station, podcast, and arts academy, but it's all about truly discovering modern rock, because I worked in modern rock broadcasting and it was very finite, the space for the true artists of today, because there's always that delicate balance between the gold and what inspired this station in the first place, right? Your Nirvana's, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, etc. But
Yep.
What Was That is all about new music discovery in and around modern alternative. And so nothing is older than 2017. Of the near 5,000 unique bands I play, this is a quick little picture so you know a bit about me, and we'll go over to you and find out
Yeah.
about you, become new friends. 90% of the playlist has been released since 2020. So it's all about constant movement forward. And as much as I respect the past and love the past and have all of those records I mentioned in here in the kitchen, I want to create more space for that realm, the new realm, the new kids on the block, so to speak. So
You got me sold. My old ass doesn't know where to look anymore for good new stuff coming out outside of my just Spotify curated thing. So you got me sold. I'm into it.
yeah, we'll dive into whatwasthatradio.com. And then everything I own is split 50-50. Half goes to me, the running costs, and quite frankly, an absurd amount of chocolate that I enjoy eating and consuming. The other half then is paid back into the community.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
what that means is we might help people with basically it's all about mental health, supporting independent bands, and the Arts Academy. So the Arts Academy is where I've got several friends of mine, including Jason, who's a magic teacher. So people can apply to get free grants to get 6 hours with Jason to learn magic. And in terms of where money goes in the community, examples are, well, Anne-Marie, a subscriber in Gibsons, BC, up in the north there in the flipping winter tundra, she lost everything during the pandemic, and we gave her a grant to help her move to her new residence. Miles, a photographer in Souk, we gave him a grant towards getting his black studio sorted out. And then people for their dog operations, for counseling, for anything and everything rather, that's all about just making sure we're as grounded and as happy as possible. That's where we're granting these grants and money towards our community. And we all discuss it as a subscription community. And then myself as the head of What Was That Radio.
Nice.
Boom.
Awesome.
3 minute in a nutshell, which has taken me a year and a half to grind down from 15 minutes to 3.
I know that feeling. What's up? Where are you located?
I'm on Vancouver Island. West
Nice.
coast of Canada, yeah.
Nice. All right.
That's why the sun is just dripping in the living room behind me on a beautiful Friday. It's raining,
sounds
but
good to
it's
me.
sunny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shit.
But tell me about you, Marshall. So, one hell of a photographer, I'm told by Jason. But what's the starting point with you, and then we can dissect a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm based out of Las Vegas, Nevada right now. I've been out here, I say about 10 years now. But I travel pretty extensively, for my living. I do a lot of, editorial work, travel work. And, but I grew up in upstate New York, and I went to undergraduate school for photography when I was young. And I've been really kind of in the game since then. And my background is I started touring with bands when I was pretty young and left my hometown to hit the road, before my 18th birthday. And I kind of fell in love with photography through like being, traveling on the road with bands and like documenting, and it kind of just led into my passion. And, I think ever since then I started taking it seriously, and it's just been a, progression from there. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of success in a bunch of different worlds, being able to work for a lot of these interesting companies that do travel work, like, National Geographic, and, also being able to do things with like museums and galleries, and showing my personal work and publishing my books. So yeah, it's a wild ride. It's never a dull moment, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
But it's an extreme hustle. I mean, where the starting point for me in conversing with you, because look, there's not a lot I know. The way I said to Jason, I'm not going to research anything at all. This is what I love doing, is conversing, making new friends, and keeping it as organic as possible. For me, from my perspective, with building What Was That Radio, the one thing that I'm really keen about is making sure that everyone is credited through the process. So if I blog about anything, whatever it might be, because a blog is an open world to the next steps, I want to make sure everyone's credited. Now, with photographers, no one ever gets credited. In my experience, just last week, I was searching for a credit for this incredible shot. I went to over 100 blogs from around the world and could not find a credit on any one of them. And I'm talking every major blog and all in between. Now, many blogs do a good job when they can source it too. But my issue as a radio station curator is the lack of, even in the press pack from labels, they don't always stipulate who the photographer is. I was going to say photog, but I went photographer. So that's my perspective on the frustration of it. Then you're talking about, okay, you've gone with these bands when you were 17, 18 years old. Well, you didn't get paid for that. You came back in debt. Then you've gone across all America doing this, that, and the other. Well, you're constantly hustling your craft and your work. And there must be a delicate balance. This is the three-pronger now, between your attitude, because there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. So how do you, Marshall, approach people and say, this is what I do. This is how I do it. Please respect me.
Oof, yeah. Well, let's be real. Making a life as a practicing photographer, especially in the past 15 years, has been, I think, a challenge. Would be a compliment. The reality of the situation is prohibitive, and to touch on that, there's a photographer in the space right now, very successful, Kath Samard. There's this kind of running joke where she changed her Twitter handle to photographer briefly because she had this image that blew up that was basically like a viral image that all these companies were just taking and attaching to their posts and everything, and they wouldn't even put her name in it. They'd just be like, photographer did this thing. And so this running gag was like, well, if you're not even going to respect me enough to give my name, then I guess I'm just photographer. But that's what we deal with every day in this space. And the reality of the situation is, I don't know any living practicing photographers that are quote unquote successful or who have made it that don't have 4 or 5 different jobs. And that stems anything from doing editorial work, personal work, selling their personal artwork, taking commission work, doing lectures, doing consulting, doing teaching through academia. The fact of the matter is that, like, pay scales, pay structures, artist rights, and representation have been so skewed to basically suit, the institutions and the platforms in between, that it's taken so much power and so much, monetary stability out of those artists and practitioners' hands that we really kind of hit an impasse where it's just like, we can't, the continuing forward, it won't work anymore. It is broken. And, I'm sure you can relate to that, in the spaces that you work in as well, where it's like, really, we've seen the advent where we came up into a world where we kind of promised that if we gave a lot of ourselves away for free, in exchange for the promise of one day there will be a financial windfall or a professional elevation due to that exposure. I think we've seen in a lot of cases that like that part of the bargain never really came to fruition.
Yeah, it's extremely delicate. I mean, that's the big journey I've been on in the last few years in leaving a corporation and leaving a set of systems. I have absolutely felt at times pretty down in the dumps about, like, oh my God, people are misconstruing me just trying to organically talk about a product I'm building for being arrogant about, why did you leave the system? We won't support. Now, that's not everyone. That's just to feed into the conversation we're having, which is that then when Jason said, but I want to speak with you, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because what I'm trying to surround myself in right now is people that are doing a similar thing, which is hustling every day, running their own business. And so what does your regular week look like leading up to the pandemic? And then what does your regular week look like now on the eve of this next project?
It is wildly different. So I think it's so funny. It's like right when, leading up into the pandemic, I was doing just a lot more reliable kind of commercial work based around, I had a job working for like Comic-Con on the convention scene where I was like just traveling regular. And so you can imagine what happened to that job overnight.
Yeah.
But it really went from being like kind of having, doing the hustle of like working for all these different people, all these different companies, just taking what you can get, very much a hurry up and kind of wait thing, to everything shut down. And I was very fortunate enough that I reconnected with my good friend, Chris Graves. And we went on the road together for like 4 months during the pandemic, which was nuts, for National Geographic, doing this really important body of work for him. And so in the process of all that happening, all this new kind of tech started coming into, I don't want to say new tech, new possibilities for this existing tech started to kind of come into fruition in it for artists. And so as we were kind of realizing that the world as we knew it, as practicing, artists and makers was kind of, I don't want to say coming to an end, but drastically shifting. We kind of realized that it was time to try and start building something with some of the opportunities that we had in front of us, and to use the experience that we had in those fields and all kind of that behind the scenes knowledge and background to try and build something that was pushing back against against all the things we didn't like. So whereas my days used to be kind of like, wake up, where am I? What are we going to shoot today? My days now are just like, it's very interesting. It's like I'm in constant engagement with an entire like roster of artists and communities. And like, we're just getting out the messaging around all these things we're doing and planning book releases. So it's like a very different, I used to be very insular. It's just like a traveling photographer, but now I'm like connected to all these people, building all these things. So it was a drastic change for me, but it's one that, I couldn't be more happy that it kind of all roads led to, in a way.
Did you want to just be Marshall on the road, just a couple of dear friends around me and nothing more, and just keep adventuring beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in that. So I grew up in this era where my relationship to photography was always associated with this. And granted, this is a false narrative. It was always associated with like an explorer that like, it's like having a camera gave you license to go out and approach the world in the sensibility of being like this. And I'm going to use like the terminology here, like an Indiana Jones or something.
Yeah.
Because that hints to the problematic nature of this idea, but that it gave you kind of this license to go out into the world on your terms and have that be valid because you were, documenting and exploring. And like, so that was all I ever wanted. I mean, I relate to visual language, and that's kind of how I express myself. And so that's what brought me into photography. But this kind of aspect of it now, it's almost in my way, it's kind of like, I think a lot of times as artists get older, some of them transition into academia as far as like, because, when you want to engage with people, you want to, teaching is one way of learning about yourself, because like anytime you talk about like a student's work or, you lecture someone, in many ways, you're talking about your own process and what you're trying to learn. And so in this weird roundabout way, I found myself in this position where I'm getting to engage every day with all these artists like I would be in an academic setting, but without those constraints. So it's really kind of been this like kind of magical accident for me.
Okay, well, let's dive a little bit deeper then into KGP, pardon me, NFT. And how did you first get looped in this then? And what is it? Because for those that don't know about you and the world that we're in, because this is going to go out to those that are already within your world. But for those that have no idea, WASers, which is what this is what we choose to lovely. It's just a lovely phrase for people that listen to What Was That Radio. I've got to work on a sentence to explain what WASer is, because a lot of people go, what the fuck are you talking about? But what to those that have no idea, and I'm still learning so much about this space as well. What is it?
Changes every day. So don't worry about that. It changes every day.
Exactly.
We make the joke about dog years, but I mean, that hints to really kind of what's happening. So I mean, first and foremost, for anybody that doesn't know, because it's a very dirty word right now, and there's reasons it's a dirty word right now, and a lot of those reasons have validity. But an NFT is a non-fungible token. The simplest way I can explain it from an artist or collector standpoint is it gives you provenance over a digital asset. So it's basically a way of saying that, like, as we have all this art and music and visuals and writing out into the ether of the digital space where we interact with it, it's a way to give people a chance to purchase it if they wish to have the provenance of the ownership over it. That doesn't mean that you're the only one that ever gets to see it, or you get to decide exactly where it gets put. No, it's kind of acknowledging the fact that we've come into a space where culture and content flows freely out in the white noise and in the ether. And this is a way of giving people that want to enjoy that on a commodity or collecting level, the ability to experience that, but also support, the artists associated with it. I got into the space in the winter of 2021 when I started seeing couple guys I know putting their photographs onto these like NFT marketplaces. And it was this very quick progression of like, what are you guys doing? Like, what is this? And then like they found some very early success. And so of course, when you see someone succeed like that, you're like, what is going on? I didn't know about this. I didn't know we could do this. I didn't know this was available. And so it was a very quick, really quick on-ramp for me. I was fortunate enough to have some people that taught me right out the gate very early on. And, we learned what the kind of the working principles behind the tech were. And when we started to realize the ramifications those would have for artists, like across all cultural mediums, it was kind of like, oh boy, like, here we go. Like, let's like strap in and let's get serious about this, because the reality of the situation for an artist is that utilizing this technology gives us the ability to not only cut through so many of the traditional barriers and gates that were holding us back, but it allows us to monetize our work in a way that we are respected on a financial level and also have a continued attachment to whatever happens to that culture. That anytime it's resold or acquired, or it has a life beyond our initial kind of output, artists receive royalties, they receive compensation, and they have a direct tie to, the furthering success of their careers, which for us, we think that was probably the most exciting thing when we were getting rolling.
So what was the sort of Eureka or aha, I need to dive into this? What was it that, because for me, I've known Jason for 12 years. And when he started talking to me, I was like, that's okay, interesting. I've got no idea what you're talking about. And then I'm seeing the success of Electro Labs and then the growth of that, what the great job that Gabe and Kale and Jason are doing, and the rest of their team is expanding day by day. But I still don't really understand too much. But for you, like when they said to me, to give my point, which I completely forgot, memory like a sieve on a Friday afternoon, but when they said, oh, we just sold 10,000 of these in 38 seconds, I was like, okay, right. Now I'm not going to jump in and try and monetize anything to help what was that, but I'm watching and listening a lot more now, even though I discussed with them tenfold beforehand. You never know what's going to happen next. What was that moment where you went, I think I need to do some research?
I honestly, for me, it was I'm going to be honest with you. The first 3 days I came into the space, I minted my first stuff on OpenSea with Chris Graves and was watching Justin Aversano in the waning days of January 2021. And in the first 3 days of putting that work up there, digging into what was happening, watching it, I immediately, and Chris and Gabe will laugh about this, like I went into like a bunker and I just wrote art theory for like a week straight. And I just made these like, I don't want to call them like white pages or anything like that, but they're just like, I just wrote all these documents on the theory of like traditional art markets, speculative valuations, cultural assets, its relation to ongoing provenance, its relation to royalty manipulation. Like I basically just like, I got so obsessed with what the technology could do once my eyes were open to it off the bat that I just started transitioning whatever kind of knowledge I had about existing, art markets and how that works and how culture functions as commodity, and just kind of like writing down like how all this could apply to what we can do with this new kind of space and this new tech. So it was like, the success I saw and the money, like at first, of course, like raised an eyebrow, but it was like, as soon as I saw like the underlying possibilities of what could be done, I realized that this is like a Wild West. Like this isn't like a once in a lifetime opportunity for a lot of artists to be able to not only transition themselves into a space where they will be compensated properly and be able to further their careers. But more importantly, they'll be able to build structures moving forward that make sure that the artists that aren't even there yet are going to have like a chance. Like they're not going to have to come up in this broken system that we did. Like they're going to have an opportunity to do something that really like allows them to further their professional practice. So it was 0 to 60 for me. I honestly have never looked back either. I was so fortunate that I received some early sales, as well as Chris did in the space. And honestly, like we took that Ethereum and we just went, okay, what can we do? Like, what can we build here that is like necessary for the space and can push it forward? So it's like, I haven't looked back since last winter.
I can see why Jason said we got to talk. You sound like you're a clinical gentleman. I mean, it's you first heard about it, then you wrote a thesis on it, then you hatched a master plan around it, and here we go. So, but that's the key for me from the outside looking in, and I think for your average consumer of this news, and the media is very delicate. It's a very delicate situation in how the media portrays what they're for or against, depending who and where it's coming from. Right now in the music world, it's all out disrespect because of this guy, this team that started ripping off Canadian bands this week. And the thing is, though, is that you're always, from my outlook on life is you're always, when you open up a new plane like this, there's going to be so many people that run onto it and go, let me fucking see how this shakes down and works. It is the wild, wild west, is exactly, you hit the nail on the head with that phrase. And it's going to take the pure and the authentic, and we trust that. Like, I've got a very good impression of you in just 20 minutes that, okay, I'm very interested because you seem very authentic. And when you've got those pillars, those are what you need in order to really stipulate the growth and the next steps for a certain space and system. And so you hope, like panning for gold, eventually all these con artists will fuck off and won't have any space and will have sowed a seed of which they can't repair. But then the key is having people like yourselves and Bitletro and other friends that I've made in this short NFT interest the last few years that are then showing, no, this is the way that we want to make sure that we're respecting all involved. We're not trying to hoodwink anyone here. We're not trying to steal anything from anyone, because I just got so furious last week reading about millionaires releasing, and this is all, look, subject to misinformation out there, but from my impression of it, millionaires saying, well, I want to make more millions, and then conning people with completely different NFTs that aren't really technically legally, but then again, wild, wild west is the three words that come back to mind. So yeah, with KGP NFT, what is the collective or the team around this? Who else is around you that's like, okay, you've got the master plan, can I input this here? And then what's the next step with it?
Yeah, and to your point, I used the term a dirty word earlier in the conversation, but it's very much the truth right now. And so anytime you get kind of like a brand new space where there's working capital flowing into it, you're going to have bad actors and you're going to have people that are trying to game the system. And I think that it's something that I like to bring up in any chance I get to if I'm actually having a progressive conversation, that the traditional art market as it exists, as we know it, in all cultural mediums for the most part, is full of speculative value manipulation, the dirty business of economics, hiding, moving money, hiding money. It's all the museums and foundations and galleries that you covet, know, and love. If you knew the real things going on, that maybe led to their formation or the businesses of art behind them, you would raise both eyebrows simultaneously. And so we're seeing in this space, what's happening is like all that stuff is replicating itself in its natural cycle. It's just doing it at 100 miles an hour, and it's doing it out in the open because on the blockchain, you have the ability to see the historical provenance of these transactions. And so with that, it's all out in the open. And that's why I very much am open to, acknowledging it, because that's the point. It's like, this is why it's interesting now too, and beneficial, because it's out in the open. It's like we're able to discuss these things that were kind of behind closed doors for many years. And, artists were kind of prohibited from really kind of bringing to the general public. But as far as our team is concerned, we're very fortunate. It was really just a culmination of timing and fortune, in the sense that, our key team, myself, Chris Graves, and Dr. Gabe Alred from Bitlectro Labs, we were all kind of working in parallel in a lot of ways. And when we realized that we could kind of form up together and tackle this problem, it was like a really magical moment. My background is I have a master's in photo bookmaking, which is, the most niche, bizarre thing you can go and get, like, well, one of them. But, I didn't realize at the time, but it was kind of leading me to this road of working with Chris. And so Chris runs a photo book, traditional photo book imprint out of New York City. He publishes photography books, and he's very, for as much as you can be as a physical publisher, he's seen a lot of success in bringing, artist stories, to the world. And his track record from a curatorial standpoint, his ethos and his messaging behind the type of work that he wants to showcase and put out into the world has been met with much deserved praise for what he does. And, then having, Doc Gabe on the team as well, with his experience with Electro and his background as well, and DeFi, it was just a chance for all of us to kind of come together and, say, we have a unique opportunity to do something early in this space and do it the right way. And I know that's subjective, but when I say the right way, I mean, be transparent about what we're doing, why we're doing it, where we see it going, and in the application it has for artists and what we actually want to do in the long term, for the overall culture.
And when it comes to the NFTs themselves, is this just going to be a collection of your work or 2 or 3 photographers' work? Is it open to other people to apply and try and impress and get involved? What does it shake down to?
Yeah, so I mean, like at its core, we're a digital publisher. So we are basically taking Chris Graves' imprint and moving it over into the Web3 space, doing NFT books. And so what I mean by that is, like, traditionally when you would buy a digital book, quote unquote, buy a digital book, you would go to a large marketplace, you would click on a button, like a little gate would creak up, and you'd have like a PDF in front of you that you would read. But that's never been accessible for artists because, making art books in the physical world is tied to the fact that they're prohibitively expensive. They're much more difficult to make. The materials used are many times much more prohibitive and challenging on a financial level. Distribution is much more difficult. And they have to be charged, we have to charge a certain amount to sell them to have any sort of chance of breaking even. Most photo books lose money. Some of them break even, but an artist that makes money off publishing their work as an art book, I mean, good luck in 2022. And more so, we see horror stories about artists losing money. And so what we saw here was an opportunity, whereas, like, if we could really kind of dig deep into what the opportunity behind, the technology presents, that we could find a way to transition, making unique books that you have actual ownership over as an individual into this space. And so it's really just all been about, really just kind of bringing all those ideas from the existing world over into this new space, but then iterating on them, pushing them further. So yeah, we'll be releasing a book once a month for the next calendar year. And with this model of that, we're really kind of a platform that's built around getting this out into the open, getting people into the idea of that you can actually, like, engage in a book in this new way in a digital space, and then going from there. So yeah, we will, Chris handles all the curatorial duties because we're very much his brand, and, his messaging around the type of work and the type of artists that he wants to showcase. That's kind of his role and responsibility, and we couldn't be happier that we have that. But yeah, eventually we will be open to submissions as well. And we also think that we're not going to be the only art book NFT publisher for very long. We think it'll actually be pretty fast that other people start coming in and doing it, which is great because this isn't about just us. We just want to be a digital publisher. We just want to do our thing and pay our artists well, and bring exciting new things to the space and push, the art and the culture further. But we think once the ball gets rolling and people see that this is possible and that we've gotten out in front and done it, it'll open up the possibilities for everybody.
Yeah, I think so too. When you say a book a month, so then that means you can only sell, one person per month could own that book?
So essentially what we'll do is think of it as like a release calendar. So each month we'll have a specific day, with a month's worth of messaging and content and promotion leading up into that release.
Right.
We'll release that artist book. Things go well, maybe we sell that book out, right away or in a short time after it gets out into the world. And once say we make 400 of them, and they're gone from us, they're not gone from the world. They're just in the hands of all the patrons and the collectors now, and they can do whatever they want with them. They can keep them, engage with them, in our platform, and view them and experience them as that evolves, through time. Or they can transact them on secondary markets, trade them with other collectors, sell them to other collectors, exchange them with other artists, however they want. The whole idea for us is that we wanted to give people the actual sense, not the actual sense. We wanted to give people actual ownership.
Yeah.
Because giving them actual ownership allows the content to actually have a life and live on as like a digital commodity, which is so important because it gives the patrons an actual stake in ownership. It gives the artist a financial windfall to continue their practice, and it forever ties the two together in the ongoing ecosystem of how, that provenance and royalty goes back into the artist, to push him forward.
Yeah, that's one thing that's been irking me that we already touched on 10 minutes ago, is that the amount of people that are coming into the space and saying, well, you don't get to actually keep or have the original. I mean, you'll get a copy. That's a big key difference. So in a book, is it still much like there might be still 50, 150 pages worth in the purchase of a book? I'm breaking down the real finite points here.
No. So, we approached it in the sense of that we wanted to use this as an opportunity to start suggesting some new ideas as we rolled it out. And so what I mean by that is, like, we started with my book, MorningStar, and that was a very deliberate decision because that was a physical book that we published in July of 2021. And so our idea was, what if we started with what the base was, the physical book? And what if we approach this from the sense of like, okay, we're now totally unbound from limitation of physical production on this book. I don't have to worry about the page count. I don't have to worry about where the physical press is. I don't have to worry about, the ramifications of size and ink and paper usage. If we move this into a digital space, how can we elevate it further? And so the idea with that was, like, we built it around the process of every time you buy one of our NFT photo books, what you end up with is a unique copy. And what I mean by that is, like, it's signed, it's hand numbered, it's number 67 out of 500. And with that, we've built in all these functions where, that might include anything from like a rare cover, behind the scenes images, an extended essay, interviews, straight down to having, photographs attached to that book, where it's like the only place that photograph exists, as a commodity is attached to that copy. And so that's a way for us to, like, give photographers the ability to take all this content, the fruits of their labor that they're limited from doing in the physical realm, and bringing it back into this digital space and trying to elevate the entire experience. And with that, it gives the people that are kind enough to kind of join us on this ride at the get-go. We want to, like, reward them with all this new and exciting stuff. It's like, we want to really drive home, like, when you buy a book from us, you're not just lifting that gate anymore. You're getting an actual book, and we're going to do everything in our power to throw in all these, new kind of cool ideas into that to reward you from engaging in that experience.
Yeah, I think that's key. And that's certainly what I've been drawn to with my interest of certain NFTs and companies that are diving into the space, is that when there's that little sprinkle of something extra and unique, and then, and I've seen in different Discord groups I've jumped into where the debate then goes down, right? It's just reminding me of being on forums for rock bands when I was getting in trouble at school for not working, right? It's just that excitement comes back where it's like, what on earth are they talking about? And they're going to trade this and move that, and you got this and you got that. And then people messaging me and saying, you're the guy that interviewed them. What did you get in yours? What's different with yours? And I'm like, oh my God, I haven't even fucking opened it yet. I was going to keep them closed for years just because you never know. So I've opened one, left the other one closed up still from my Dreamers and Bit Electro Labs campaigns. But yeah, what am I missing, Marshall? What am I not asking you that you think is imperative that people know about?
I think, the big thing around our messaging right now is it's really interesting because we're doing a bunch of things all at once. The most important thing, obviously, is that we're getting out the gate and introducing this idea into the space, into the world as a whole, that that a book can exist as a digital commodity with unique ownership and unique content. But I think it's really important for us to also lay into the fact that this is not about us, long term. that we think that this opens up the door for people working in all different mediums to engage in this idea of putting your work together into an accessible body, as a story, as an experience. And so what I mean by that is like we're very fortunate to have a tech team with us that's building and iterating on what we're doing. So it's like with each of our releases moving forward, our goal is to challenge ourselves to incorporate new ideas into this. And what I mean by that is like, what's stopping us from having a book now that has music that accompanies, the sequential experience of going through it? What stops us from including visuals and motion and introducing aspects of time and experiential, in experiential ramifications of where you are geographically, or, so, and by doing that, what I mean when I say it's not all about just us, this isn't just about photographers. Like we see this as opening up the door for musicians, for videographers, for skateboarders, for fashion designers, tattoo artists, to basically take all this content that they produce that uses various mediums, but put it together in this digital space, in these packages that we're creating for them to kind of give their viewers a chance to experience their content in a new and exciting way.
Yeah, well said. Do you remember the first photo you took that you went, holy shit, there's something to this. I might do this for a long time?
Oh, yeah. I think I was in like, there was I took some stuff when I was in like high school that I was like pretty high on. I really enjoyed, but I was on the road when I was like, I think I was like 17 or 18. I was like on Ozfest and I was like photographing my friend's band on the side of the stage. And I was like, I took this picture of my friend in front of the sea of like 5,000 people. And it was just like, it was a cool shot, you know what I mean? But I just remember like the kind of the feeling of like having that feeling like I distilled this kind of like magical experience into this moment that then was going to live on for all of us as part of like our story. And I think from there, it started the ball rolling in my head that it was like photography wasn't just a tool for me to accomplish a task, but it was the ability for me to try and distill a personal experience through a visual language that allowed me to have a dialogue with people I didn't even know. And I think ever since there, I've just been head over heels in love with it.
Yeah. Ozfest. I would have loved to have gone to an Ozfest. I always watched on TV from over the other side of the world, but yeah, there's so much. That was what was. I always said to my parents, I'm not going to get a motorbike until I'm in my 30s, and then I waited a few years after that, and then I finally got one a few years ago, and I was going to come down, team up with my friends that have moved to LA years ago, and do San Fran and do this, that, and the other. There's still so much to explore in North America, and then pandemic, but we'll get there eventually. But yeah, it'd be sweet to roll up to some of these festivals and just you can take the pictures.
It was a good time from what I can remember. It was a good time.
Yeah, from what you can remember, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm surprised that camera made it through Ozfest at all at that age.
Well, I might have lost one or two along the way.
Yeah. No, awesome. Well, I mean, I think that's why I asked a few moments ago. I hope there's nothing that I'm missing here, but then actually, no. When you were doing the National Geographic work during a pandemic, so focusing on that, what do you mean? You were just sort of going around and capturing communities for National Geographic, sort of looking at how it was impacting communities, or what was the angle on that?
Well, so this was a crazy project so Chris and I, Chris Graves, the partner in this, we work a lot on the road together, where it's like if he'll get like an extensive assignment, I'll basically I'll navigate and drive the car and assist and kind of give him backup while he's out there kind of working. And then I'll be kind of like doing video or photographing kind of on the tertiary as well. We work as a team in a lot of ways. But the first and foremost, those projects and those ideas, when him and I are on the road in that capacity, are solely, his projects.
Right.
And so this one was monumental. So Chris came up with this idea that he wanted to drive through the American, the American East Coast into the South and document hundreds of Confederate monument sites, as we were going through a period where some of these monuments were being removed, some were being defaced, some were being protected. And the whole idea was to basically build this visual, this big visual compendium of all of these sites for both the historical and current social ramifications of everything that was going on. So we spent months going through all these different states, all these different towns, visiting these monuments, these sites, photographing them. And it was a pretty intense experience. This was in the fall of, this is in the late summer and fall of 2020, right before the presidential elections. And, we spent time in DC all the way down into, the smaller parts of South Carolina and Georgia. But it was a really intense experience. And I'm really proud that, Chris was able to find the success he did with the work. He had that year's cover of National Geographic, and, the body of work's been, widely celebrated and put out there. And, it's furthered his professional practice and awareness. So he's the man's slaying it.
But this is where people like Chris and yourself, this is where so many that are on the lower end of the scale is how community looks at it. Like, go and get a job. What are you doing? This is where, to me, it is absolutely crucial. It's paramount that these kind of souls exist on this planet, because they're willing to go where others would rather talk about than actually venture down the path of and explore and understand the energy and the reaction to this, that, and the other, and whatever fickle experience can go down in human beings' life. Because right now in Canada, the country is at war with each other because there's a left side and a right side, and you either agree with this side or that side. We've seen that with the American election down south. I'm not going to get too political, but it's speaking more to how human beings are ultimately prepared to just pick a side and not actually seek that growth to understand or have that wish to truly comprehend someone else's thought and discuss it in a respectful way, even when one might disagree with the other. And that, to me, is an outstanding idea to go down there. I admittedly didn't know about it until Jason gave me the tip off and you've shared more about it, but I'm going to research that now, because then what's key with that is the writings of the experience. And there's two ways that can go. You can either choose to write for the team 1 or team B, team 1 or team 2, I guess I could have said A or B, whatever. If you're impartial and you can include all to allow, well, look, these feel this way and these feel this way, and here's what I took down. And then that's what we need more of. We need more people doing those treks and those adventures and showcasing the true humanity, instead of just humans looking at their phone and saying, well, I've made a decision, without really doing any work to decide.
Yeah, and I mean, from a cultural standpoint, I think that we're very much, my personal political beliefs are that we're polarized by design in many ways, in almost in a way to distract us from actually engaging in the history and the lineage of the machinations that are behind everything that's happened, because you don't really want us to dig into that stuff, because if we did, and it was fully out in the forefront, I think a lot of us would have some major realizations about the things we take for granted, or the things that we assume about different aspects of our political systems, social structures, socio-political, history. So, but I mean, as a photographer, it's interesting because I think there's a lot of still people that still dwell in this idea that photographs have this like inherent truth to them, that they're this means of distilling fact, that's this cross of science into culture. And the reality of the situation is that when you pick up a camera and when you take a photograph, when you depict a scene, it is inherently tied to your perspective, your beliefs, your emotional engagement, your everything from your physical stature to, what I mean? There's so many different elements that you uniquely bring as a photographer into making an image, that it's just, to say that it's strictly like factual, I just don't really believe in. And so, but with that, there's artists working with that as out in the open, like someone like Chris, where it's just like, yeah, he's not pretending that he's showcasing, these monuments, in a strictly just chronology. He's showing and choosing to depict things happening around them that hints at maybe some of the underlying violence and oppression. And I don't want to speak for him too much, but as a photographer, I think it's like important that like you don't have to like lean into it like all the way in your in your messaging and say like, this is what this is why it's important, this is what you can give people ambiguity, but you can as an artist respond to a scene and saying that, yes, I chose to depict this in this manner because that's how I felt in its presence.
Yeah. And that's the key, the context around it, the shot alone, in case my point was remiss in making that, it's about the context around the shot too, that is so crucial, and then how the person that took it and writes about it carries themselves and treats others. That's also kind of crucial as well. Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating. No, this has been great. It's been great to get to speak with you. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that you're the thesis man. When there's a plan, you're going to hatch it and spend hours sorting it out. So it's been a real delight to get to know you a little bit. And I'm sure we'll converse again. I think the next plan is for me to speak with Chris at some point. But to bring it back as one last note with KGP NFT is, what is the timeline then?
Yeah, so our first release is coming out right around probably 3 weeks from now, towards right around the end of February. And so it's going to be my book. And then next month, Chris Graves is going to put out a really exciting book that's got some crazy things going on around like how it's made and what a book can be. And so right now we're just kind of in these like final pushes of getting out there on an awareness level. And over the next few weeks, we're going to be releasing like new information on so a lot of the technical aspects of the work, upcoming releases, artists that we're bringing into the system, how we're going to handle, how this works on just a functional level, on a secondary market level, what it does for artists. So yeah, so much information to share. We're in that kind of full speed ahead mode right now, but it's really cool because it's like we're coming at it from a place where it's just like we have so much we want to share and we have so much we want to talk about. So it's not just us having to like kind of pitch. You know what I mean? It's like we're very much like able to every day get up and have like these discussions that we think are pretty meaningful. So
yeah. And then what have you shared about what's in your release so far?
So the cool thing about mine is we kind of designed it so we wanted to make sure that everybody that kind of started off on this journey with us is going to get rewarded in a sense. In what I should say is that has the opportunity to get really excited about the things we can do. So my edition is going to include everything from like special editions and these covers, extended editions, behind the scenes. And also what we decided to do was, so right now photographs are sold as NFTs are just these individual images.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
There's a lot of talk about the value that is attached to those because, and don't get me wrong, I'm so stoked for the artists. They're going at a pretty high price and there's a lot of transactions associated with it and artists are getting paid and that's rad. But we decided that we could do something really unique with our books where we took out of this project MorningStar, when I was editing it for the physical book, I had about 49 images that I'd made over 7 years that I had to cut out of the book because it had to be a certain length, it had to be a certain size. I mean, these are images as an artist I labored over. I was in love with at various points.
Hours and
hours. But they got shut out of the final product because the final product had to be what it was because of the marketplace it was going into. And so what we realized is what we could do is, hey, we could bring all of those back. So I've got this bank of images that a lot of them people have never seen, that are sitting and waiting to get randomly attached to these books. So that now when we launch and collectors pick up our book, there's going to be, 49 to 53 of them that are going to come with these one-to-one photographs forever attached to that book. And so that's just another way of us to say like, hey, we see what's going on in the community. We see what you're all like really interested and engaged with as far as like what you want to collect and what you want to buy. We're going to give you like a new incentive, a new way to kind of engage with this, maybe open this up for artists to kind of use this practice in the future. So yeah, it's rad. It's going good. We're doing like a pre-sale sign up now and it's going pretty well. So yeah, it's exciting. The day that comes that when we have people reading, NFT books and trading them on secondary markets, it's around the corner and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited to see what you guys are all going to do. And I think it's for the benefit of, as you've been stressing multiple times here, for the entire community of photographers and artists in this realm. Because again, from my limited outlook on this, from my experience in going to festivals for 20 years, making best friends at photographers, there is not a level playing field right now when it comes to financial support for the work and the time put in the first place. So this is very intriguing. And I think it's situations like this that are ultimately is this new universe of NFTs that, again, has exploded into consciousness the last few years, but this is not brand new. It's these kind of projects that are going to really create those pillars that I said half an hour ago in this conversation. Those pillars of trust with communities that are interested and pillars of trust with communities that then go from beyond being interested to diving in and getting involved in it. Because the next steps could be huge for someone like you. Last thing, completely off topic. You've not got the same tattoo as me, have you? What is that red? That's not a red lightning bolt on your right arm, is it?
Oh no, I've got a Raiden.
Okay, just checking.
I got a little Fujin up here. This is my all my tattoos on my arms are kind of like my rabbit foot from all my traveling. I just have all like elemental beings. It's just kind of, they're my kind of good luck charm.
What, you get a different thing each city you go, like Ed Sheeran does, or what do you mean?
And I'm lucky that I've been like, I grew up with a guy that's very successful. So he's been doing all my work since I was 18. But the whole idea, like, the idea maybe and I'm going to butcher, so please no offense to anybody in the audience that hears me misconstrue this, but I was always under the impression that in Japanese culture, there was amount of respect that was tied, a fear and a respect that was tied to deities that were associated with like the forces of elemental nature, like in that. So to like have them like, as imagery on my body was like a means of saying like, I acknowledge that I am smaller than the world that I exist in, and that these forces around me at any given moment can dictate the terms of my existence and what happens next. So it's kind of like a show of respect.
All right. Sweet. Well, mine's a show of respect to all my favorite bands.
Nice.
It just alludes, it's just artwork that alludes to bands that if you're a super fan, you might know, but there's nothing obvious like this is Queens of Stone Age or this is a Mastodon tattoo or whatever.
Nice.
You'd have to know.
Nice.
Okay, well, awesome. It's been a real delight, Marshall. How do I actually pronounce your last name properly? Is it Scheuttle or Scheuttle?
Scheuttle.
Scheuttle. Okay, perfect. I don't know why I went Scheuttle like you're some sort of fucking fancy perfume. Pardon me.
Well, it's awkward for me every time because I'm like I'm an Irishman with a German last name from a lineage of adoption. So every time I go to Berlin on work, people are saying my name, and I'm just like, who? And they're like looking at me, and I'm just like, oh man, I've been doing this wrong my entire life.
There we go. Well, whatever fits for you. No, awesome. Well, the next steps for me is that I'm going to do some more research on KGP NFT, which is if you put .com on the end of that. But all that will be linked underneath the video here on YouTube. And what I always say as well, and like I said to Jason, is whenever I speak with anyone, you are as much an owner of this as I am. So if you need this video uploaded to the cloud and then to take it down and clip it and do whatever you want with it, it is yours as much as mine. And no, just thank you for being you. I appreciate what I've learned from you, and I'm sure that we will speak again. And I'm really excited to speak to Chris in the coming weeks and to keep an eye on where this goes. I'll jump into Discord shortly. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I can't say it enough that the promise of what's happening right now is boiled down to the fact that we're able to engage with each other on these platforms and to be able to meet each other, learn from each other, engage with each other. And that's a privilege that up in my professional practice, I haven't always had. So I'm just very appreciative. It was a pleasure to meet you. And it was an even greater pleasure to have an open progressive discourse. So thank you. Yeah. Awesome, man. Have a great rest of your day and we'll speak to you soon, Marshall. All right. You too. Bye. Bye. All right, there we go. We're learning a little bit about the old KGP NFT with Mr. Marshall Scheuttle. I don't know why I said bloody Scheuttle. Very dramatic. If you have watched this entire thing, thank you. I really appreciate it. And whatever you're doing with the rest of your day, and as always, please look after yourself. And I hope there's some fun and smiles involved in the rest of it too, because we've got to cherish that positive. Thank you for your time. And cheerio.